The Open Philanthropy Project recently gave a $500,000 grant to ACE. However, they wrote a damning criticism of ACE, stating that they had used a, quote, reliance on low-quality research, low-quality data, and that they had reservations about the level of vetting ACE applies to charities' claims about themselves. In other words, the public may very well have been deceived into donating potentially millions of dollars based on bad science and self-made claims.
Leafleting is a big deal. And I saw a lecture recently at the vegan conference that happens every year in the Czech Republic, in Prague. There's a YouTube channel for it called Vegan Kennel. And there was this maybe 19-year-old girl gave a lecture. So she could have been 20, she could have been 18, I forget. But a young woman, and she was very nervous and having trouble speaking. She goes up and stands in front of this live crowd and gives a lecture. And she says, well, this is going to be a lecture about leafleting, about like effective leafleting, and why I want all of you to be super excited about leafleting. And I sat there like really hostile. Sorry, I'm not in the crowd. I'm watching this on YouTube. I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes. And it's funny, this girl gives a totally jejune, pointless set of reflections on leafleting. And I realized, oh, so this young woman doesn't realize that right now within the vegan movement, leafleting is like a political minefield. It's become this really loaded thing because of groups like Animal Charity Evaluators. Now, okay, I guess this is as good a time as any. I can cut to a minute or so clip from this video by Shark.
Animal Charity Evaluators, or ACE, is a group that claims to review organizations for effectiveness. Then they promote those charities and ask people to financially support them. ACE awards 3 organizations top charity status. This positioning is incredibly lucrative, as top charities get the most money donated to them. From its inception to the time of this video, only 4 groups have been awarded top charity status. All of them are related to an animal rights activist named Nick Cooney. This includes Mercy for Animals, where he is executive vice president, the Humane League, where he is the founder and board chair, and the Good Food Institute, where he was co-founder and board chair. Top charity status is a fiscal designation and is potentially worth millions of dollars in donations. Considering there are 20,000 humane organizations in existence, it made no sense that only those groups either founded by or having a financial relationship with Nick Cooney were chosen for that highly profitable top charity status. ACE also put deceiving information on their GuideStar page. They claimed that in 2016 they, quote, conducted evaluations of over 300 animal charities. However, when we go back to their website, we see that the total number of charities they have reviewed is a third less than that. Out of that 205, an astounding 117 supposed reviews consisted of a website link and nothing more. The reality is they focus on those they pre-selected to promote.
A large part of the scam that this group, Animal Charity Evaluators, has been foisting on the vegan movement on the world, and I feel confident calling it a scam, begins with the assumption that for every one person who becomes vegan, you save so many animal lives. So they set up a calculus to this. So they start off by saying, well, let's suppose that if one person who's a meat eater becomes vegan, that saves the lives of 30 animals. Now, we already had a video talking about the extent to which this is dubious or untrue, or we can't proceed with this assumption. And then they say, okay, now let's estimate if you give this charity $1,000 and they hand out so many thousand leaflets, they convert the money into a leafleting campaign, then how many meat eaters become vegan because of having a leaflet handed to them? And then through this calculus, they tell you for every $1 you donate to this charity, you save the lives of 8 animals or 15 animals. Now, to me, already that's a scam. If you regard that in isolation, that is a scam. If I say to you, you donate $100 to me, and I'm going to save the lives of 27.3 animals, I give you a specific factual claim, that already is a scam. But it really gets more slippery and kind of psychologically manipulative when you're comparing more than one type of vegan activism, which is exactly the point of this research. The point is to have a comparative, evaluative overview of what different vegan groups are doing. So to give an example, I just looked up what Shark does. You've seen the video by Shark, but it doesn't tell you who they are or what they do. So this is interesting. Now I'm not hating. But this is not my cup of tea. I'm not into rodeos. I don't care about rodeos and horse races and horse-drawn carriages. For me and my vegan activism, that's not the issue I'm going to tackle, right? There are so many different issues, but it doesn't mean I think rodeo activism is bullshit. That's not my perspective. But I'm just saying I'm totally detached from this. It's not what I'm into. So an example of one of the things they did was objecting to supermarkets in the Trader Joe's chain. So Trader Joe is a chain of supermarkets. We don't have them in Canada, I don't think, but you guys have them in the States. So two different shops from Trader Joe's were donating money to support rodeos. Oh. And A.C.E, they did an intervention. They exposed this, and they said, no, this isn't acceptable. And apparently the higher levels of the Trader Joe's Corporation agreed with the activists. They said, yeah, they don't want the name of Trader Joe's linked to rodeos. They also agreed and said, no, that's true. Individual branch stores or something. See, I don't know how their corporate hierarchy works, but probably there's some independence for local stores to do local promotions. And they said, yeah, they don't approve of promotions linking Trader Joe's to rodeos, so this should stop. So, okay, what is the effectiveness of this form of activism? If you're actually going to put a number on it, and they choose this organization, A.C.E, they're not just putting a number like a rating, like A+ through D-. They're not putting a number from 1 to 10. They're actually attempting to put a number on it. That's the number of animal lives saved. I'm not. This is my real life girlfriend. She's not just my co-host on the TV show. But if we're back in Canada and you wanted to get involved in, protesting against a rodeo, something like that, it's not like I'd say no, absolutely not. I'd say, oh, okay, well, let's see how it goes. It's open mind, open heart. See if we can make a positive difference. But how would you measure the positive difference? And if you came to me one day and you said, Eisel, I just came back from the protest. I just saved the lives of 27 animals. I look at you like, what are you, crazy? Now, this kind of protest, so this specific example, 2 different shops were prevented from donating money to a rodeo, to supporting a rodeo and doing promotion. I think, the most positive outcome probably will be that it made a lot of people ask themselves difficult questions. Probably people inside Trader Joe's had to stop and ask themselves, whoa, what's our corporate mission? What direction are we going in? Just ordinary average people who happen to see the story in a newspaper, there's controversy, probably stop and ask themselves, gee, a sporting event that's based around electrocuting cows and horses and then, chasing them around a field. There is, in terms of effectiveness, there are these effects, but to quantify them at all is incredibly difficult. Just to quantify them, to give them like a grade, like A- or B+, that's already a huge challenge. And to have an objectively real, consistent quantification where I could look at that protest against rodeos and compare it to a protest against fur farms and say, oh, this one's an 8 out of 10, and this one's a 7 out of 10. Mm-hmm. That's a huge challenge for the social sciences. I'm not saying it's impossible, because I've been involved with projects like that. Like in Cambodia, where you sit down and you're like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is this hospital compared to this hospital? It's complex. What makes a good hospital and a bad hospital? How good is the hospital at helping poor people? How good is it at performing complex surgeries? What are the wait times? What are the signs of corruption? There's a lot that goes into that. How clean is the hospital? Literally, one of the measures we had was how often do the surgeons wash their hands? Where we watched them. We had the researchers sit in the room and watch whether or not the doctor washed their hands differently. But maybe you have a great hospital, but the doctors don't wash their hands enough. It's great in a lot of ways, but not that one. And you've got to actually come up with the math. How important is washing your hands compared to helping poor people or doing really good surgeries or something?
Well, even with that, wouldn't it be difficult to quantify how many lives were saved or how many lives were lost because of the hand washing?
Great point. We never attempted that, but that's a great point. Could you extrapolate how many lives you're saving? Sure.
The only thing I could think is if there was a protest going on at a rodeo, afterwards, if somebody wanted to hand out a survey and people would answer did you see the protesters? Did you think about it while you were watching the rodeo? That would be the only thing that I think could lead to.
I'm even very skeptical of that because there are studies of that kind. There are.
Of course, it's
right.
What is it, volunteer bias or whatever? Like whoever chooses to actually fill out the survey,
Right. So that's already a problem. Is sample selection? And is it self-volunteered or is it chosen another way or what have you? Yeah. Those are huge problems in the social sciences. But even when you do research like that, so I mean, A.C.E. did this one study. And they interviewed about 489 people. So the exact number is in the article linked below from Harrison Nathan. Yeah. And one person, so this is like 489 people who were leafleted. And then they interviewed and they did a study, like how effective was this leaflet? Yeah. One person became vegetarian after this leafleting. But even then...
You can't say, because this person went vegetarian, we saved how many, cows' lives.
Real simple point. Is the person Hindu? Are their parents Hindu? This is a huge... but is the person Chinese? Are they Chinese from Taiwan? Already something like that, which I'm not mentioning because I'm racist. The fact that I'm racist has nothing to do with it. Most people have some kind of background experience before they make the decision to go vegan. Like, even if someone handed you a pamphlet and you saw it and were like, you know what, yeah, I should go vegan. Right. Like, in my case, it's not my I don't have a background as a Hindu, but I mean, I had a background. I could now talk for an hour. Yeah. What were the childhood experiences and background, the values? My father, he started doing a PhD on Hinduism. And actually, Hinduism was part of the reason. My father never converted. He's white, in case you haven't guessed. But, my father was involved with Hinduism, and that shaped his worldview, and it shaped what he said about vegetarianism to me growing up, and so on, too. And, obviously, I could list off 100 other things. But I don't believe there's this really simple cause and effect. Like, you hand someone a pamphlet on veganism, they're like, oh, veganism. Oh, I'll do that next week. Cool. Like, I don't think, and effectiveness, this is about cause and effect. And even something that, like a major intervention like the rodeo, maybe you're spurring people to ask questions.
Yeah. Definitely not in America or Canada, but maybe in China, if you handed out leaflets, like there are people that seem to have never heard of it, despite Buddhism being being such a prominent religion in this region. But with Chinese, so I have a lot of experience talking about this with Chinese and with Buddhists of other ethnicities, including Buddhists from Sri Lanka and Thailand and other parts of the world. But like normally, even then, so when you talk to Chinese people, like when I said before, well, is this person Hindu or are they Chinese, or do they have another background? Maybe they're white or black, but there's something else that's pushing them to the brink of being ready to think about veganism. So even if I talk to a Chinese person who's grown up with parents and grandparents who are devout Buddhists, or you talk to an Indian person who has vegetarians in their family, which is very common. They may come from a mixed caste family. Some of their family relatives are vegetarian and some eat meat. It's very common in India. So they come out of whatever background they've got. Very often you get a lot of questions back like, oh, is that even nutritionally possible? Mm-hmm. Now, they may be hostile. They may say, well, I think if I'm vegan, I'll die. I won't be able to survive. That's a sincere concern, And, you may start to talk to them about that, but it's obvious if this person doesn't sit down and do a couple hours of reading about the nutrition, they're not going to make the change. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not hating. I want people, go ahead, do the reading. Don't make the decision out of blind ignorance. If you really think you need to eat milk to live, which millions of people believe that in India, people believe that in America, people believe that in China. They think they will die if they don't eat dairy products. Well, I can help you out, but it's not like that one pamphlet. I don't believe people make that leap in response to one pamphlet. Right. And again, that doesn't mean pamphlets have zero efficacy. But this is a kind of bizarre game that I would describe as a scam of, and the thing that's painful is it's a scam that's kind of at the crossroads between like mathematics and morality. You can put a number on anything. We can assign 500 leaflets.
Yeah, therefore 12 people became vegan. Right. Therefore, 12 times 30 is we saved so many animal lives.
That study that you mentioned, you can't apply that to every pamphlet that you hand out in the future. You can't say like, oh, well, the last time we did this, 1 out of every 498 people became vegetarian. This time, like, same. So, like, if we hand out leaflets over and over again, we'll get this one.
Let's get really racist. What if you're handing out those pamphlets in front of a Hindu temple? Where everyone coming out, they're already somewhere on the vegetarian spectrum, as opposed to handing them out in Alaska.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think that's different? I mean, Anchorage, Alaska. We can choose a specific, in front of a Presbyterian church in Anchorage, Alaska. You don't think there are slightly different outcomes? You know what I mean? Like, anyway, sorry, but...
Outside the mayor's office where Sarah Palin's in there.
Well, you know, I mention this again. I'm mentioning this not in order to be racist, but the point is to draw attention to the profound cultural moorings of these questions and how people come up with answers, and the extent to which the pamphlet doesn't have like a quality we can evaluate and assign a number to in a vacuum. You know what I mean? I think also, I mean, the context of like if I have a deep interaction with someone about veganism, and then they say they want more information, and I give them a pamphlet. Like that's really different from like standing at, like literally showering a crowd with pamphlets. You can just be throwing them into a crowd. A pamphlet being maybe the last thing somebody gets after some kind of interaction with activists at a demo. That's very, very different from the pamphlet being the whole focus of your form of activism. And again, I don't even want to say like these things are not effective. I'm just saying it's really, really hard to assign a number to them. And the types of effect are very hard to put the same number on. The type of effect of a publicity stunt, like maybe shutting down the rodeo, maybe protesting the rodeo. Shark also protests at pigeon shoots,
Oh, yeah.
Now, I sympathize. Like, as a vegan, I sympathize. They're horrified by actually watching these pigeons die slow, terrible deaths and so on. I sympathize, and they want to be there and have cameras and shout, and I think they get on the news and get in the newspaper for showing. In some ways, that's effective.
Yeah.
But how do I compare that to PCRM? So PCRM is Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. PCRM taking a lawsuit and challenging the government and actually changing government policy, it's very hard to put a number on. There's another huge category here, by the way. If you click on the link for Harrison Nathan's article, ACE assigns numbers, which again I think are a scam, to collaborations between vegan charities and meat-producing corporations. Oh. So it's like, now again, I'm not going to make a simple statement. Somebody like Gary Francione would just say this is evil, period. Like that's it. This is evil. Any cooperation between vegans, and that's the end of it. But that's not what I'm here to say. Okay, so you got a vegan organization doing kind of hand-in-hand cooperation with like a dairy company or a poultry producer or what have you. And allegedly this dairy producer is changing something they do to be more ethical, to be less painful to the animals because this vegan group recommended it or co-signed it or something. And, would they have done it anyway? Or what, what's the nature of the kind of propaganda and product here or something, It's, you're going to assign a number to that for animal lives saved? Like already, if it was just a scorecard, if it was just an ordinal number, if it's just A+, A-, if you're just giving it thumbs up or thumbs down, I think you can have a kind of investigative, meaningful dialogue about how good or bad this is. But like, how many lives were saved? Yeah. So look, most of what we talk about on this channel when we talk about effective activism is it's subjective in a very overt, transparent sense. If Melissa tells me she wants to go down and do rodeo activism, the question I'm asking is this effective for you? Is this effective compared to the other things you could be doing with your time? Mm-hmm. And I think, again, like, I have a million videos on this channel criticizing Direct Action Everywhere, aka DXE. Direct Action Everywhere is a particular vegan group. I think they're wrong about so many things. But they were founded in a moment of honest reflection where Wayne Seung, their founder, he'd handed out pamphlets, I think, over 100 times. He'd done these demonstrations where they hand out pamphlets and they hand out free vegan cookies. And they invite people to come to see a documentary for free. And he said over doing this thousands of times, the number of people who converted to veganism or shown any interest, was a handful. It was an incredibly small number an incredibly small number had ever sent him an email. Like there was an email on the pamphlet for more information. Yeah. And it's like 5 people had ever sent him an email. And only a couple people had ever shown up at the film night who weren't already vegan. Like people had actually been given the pamphlet. So over years of doing this, he hit his limit and said, this doesn't work, something has to change. That's a really honest moment and a really honest reflection on effective activism. And I see more value in that. I mean, like I feel like he's asking the right questions than in this scam animal charity evaluators have foisted on the vegan movement. And that from my perspective, the whole so-called effective activism movement, sub-movement, I think has drawn the name of effectiveness through the mud. You've discredited the concept of effectiveness itself. anything can be measured. You can assign numbers to things. To me, at the moment, to be honest with you, emotionally, I'm a little bit more fucked up about this because I've just lately been dealing with, again, the question of how do you measure the effectiveness of Buddhist meditation? To me, that's profoundly similar, where it's like, okay, I can take someone and teach them how to meditate and then measure how much less angry they are after meditation. And how do you measure anger? How do you assign a number from 1 to 10 to how angry someone was before and after they meditate? It's not a shallow question. And then there are all these questions that are easy to deal with in a Socratic way, but seem so difficult for people to deal with as soon as you assign a number to something. As soon as we're into this weird intersection between math and morality. Like, it seems to me the way A.C.E., Animal Charity Evaluators, the way they respond to this kind of criticism is by saying, how dare you? If you ask these questions, you're against the animals and we're for the animals. It's the same with the Buddhist meditation stuff. It's like, well, if you dare to question this scientific study saying that meditation is effective, then you're against Buddhism or you're against meditation, etc. But those are exactly the tough questions we have to ask. And in the 21st century, all the evidence I see just indicates that, if anything, people have become more and more naive, more and more jejune about what math means, the basic assumptions of the social sciences.
Well, you see how much they get in donations.
Yeah.
Based off of what they say about the different charities that they evaluate. So, like, in that video, it mentions like four
right.
Animal charities that have been getting the most donations.
Yeah. Well, that's another weird part of this game, is just the amount of money involved. You and I have we've never talked about that. You and I have never once asked the question, how much money do you think we can raise for blank in veganism? Never. We don't look at it that way. But, that's the other thing many people watching this may have forgotten about. There is big money in this game. Yeah. And in one case in the video, it mentions an agency that, the Open Philanthropy Project. Yeah. And even though they published criticism saying that this is a bad organization, A.C.E., they still gave them $500,000. Right. $500,000 US is a lot of money. And
what do they do with it? They didn't even evaluate more than, apparently, they really evaluated 21 charities, but the rest of them were considered, and
and they
just didn't look like legit. The research.
The numbers don't add up very well for A.C.E. that way, right?
And the group that actually donated to them, the Open Philanthropy Project, they were critical.
They directly say
despite
that this
giving them $500,000.
They directly say this relies on pseudoscience, this relies on numbers that don't make sense, and so on, right? But I'm guessing that project, it's the same thing in a lot of other areas of philanthropy, nonprofit, charity work, etc. They probably just have a list of applicants, and they got to pick 3 or 4 that are the least bad to give money to do their budget for that year. A lot of the time, it's like, well, you don't have to be good, you just have to be better than the alternative to get that budget, Yeah. So it's funny though. It is another wake up call to me. They're like, well, there are donors out there. There's demand for action on these issues. Yeah. There are people
that want to donate to animal.
Some of them are foundations. Some of them are foundations like Open Philanthropy, but I'm guessing it's mostly elderly, retired people who want to see change, who want to see action on these issues. And obviously, everyone knows PETA has a multi-million-dollar budget, but a lot of these agencies do. And I guess, what we call outcome evaluation, it's the quantitative side. I guess what they're confronted with is, how do they actually quantify what it is they did with your money after you give that money to them? And that's a tough question. If you paid for everyone's bus ticket just to come to a protest at a rodeo, is that a good or a bad use of donor money? I think that's really debatable. And I'm open, you know what I mean? I think we can talk about that. As opposed to the alternatives. We can just buy bus tickets, you know what I mean? Long haul bus tickets for a bunch of people to come to a rodeo, and then stand in front of the rodeo holding placards. Yeah. I can think of better things to do with the same amount of money, but I can't assign that a simple number. How many lives will be saved? These guys, though, Ace, they even assign money for internet advertisements. That for every $1 you spend on putting a pro-vegan advertisement on the internet, you're going to save 18 animals' lives.
Oh, really?
To me, this is crazier than a Buddhist belief in karma. we're getting real crazy now. You know what I mean? Like, to me, this is at the same level as like Catholic prayer or something. Like, okay, so if you do this,
save this many souls.
Right, yeah, if you do this symbolic act, if you donate this money, you'll save so many souls, you'll have some kind of good outcome. But a lot of stuff in Buddhist and pseudo-Buddhist cults are like that, with, trying to assign a value to karmic acts. Yeah. Anyway, look, I mean, like everyone else, there was a time when I saw, effective activism. So there's this movement within veganism to try to really evaluate what is and isn't effective. I had a positive bias. I thought, great, what could be wrong with that?
Yep.
And then these assholes show us exactly what's wrong with it. Like, any idea, it's amazing, any idea can be misused. That's like the moral of the story. It's like, in this case, well, I mean, all idealism is dangerous. All ideals are inherently corruptible and misleading and bad and wrong. But wow, even an ideal as simple as we should care about and try to measure what is effective can in this way be discredited.
They say it to try to get more donations. And like you said, people are easily swayed by that, seeing like this will save this many lives or this many animal lives. But like, there has to be a way to garner donations that doesn't have, like, you don't have to lie about it, right? Like
I accept donations myself. I raised $6,500 in less than 48 hours.
Yeah.
I myself have an open Patreon. I make under $200 a month out of it. But it's real. I want to say too, I've said this in many videos lately, the most underrated activists in veganism are the restaurant owners. Own a hot dog stand, own a restaurant, own whatever you own. Those people are so. How many lives do you save by running a vegan hot dog stand? I think that's impossible to assign that number to. I think it's ridiculous and surreal. And how do you compare, so let's just say you own a restaurant in downtown Detroit. In downtown Detroit, and the sign for the restaurant says the word vegan. Or let's say the sign for the restaurant says vegan food is healthy. That's the name of the restaurant, right? What is the effect? What is the effectiveness of that restaurant just standing there? Because it does have an effect. The same way that gay rights organizations, back in the day, back when homosexuality was way more taboo, it was a huge statement to just have a permanent office in downtown Toronto for gay rights. Because it normalized, it said, hey, we exist, we're not going away, we're not hiding, this isn't something secret, like gay rights is this cause, and we got this office, and you know what I mean? Yeah. Nobody had to even walk inside it, you know what I mean? That made a statement just by existing. Then, as I've mentioned in other videos, they got quoted in the newspaper, whenever journalists had to ask someone about a gay rights issue or a controversy, they'd call them, and other people will say, like someone who's a total meat eater will say, oh yeah, we have quite a few vegan restaurants here in Detroit. Oh yeah, vegans. Oh yeah, there's a neighborhood, there's a district, there are a few places around. Oh yeah, that's something normal and permanent. That's an option that exists. It's not going to kill you. You're not going to die for lack of dairy products or something. Those are powerful and important messages that get across just by the restaurant existing, even if nobody eats there. You know what I mean? Like, even I'm not assigning karmic value to the actual vegan hot dog. You know what I mean? But I can never do this kind of calculus.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking of the actual charities or the organizations that were mentioned. So Mercy for Animals. What I mostly think of when I think of Mercy for Animals is like farm sanctuaries. And
yes.
Like, I think that really makes people, like, it appeals to people's desire to just, like, it makes people sad to know that so many animals are being killed in a slaughterhouse and like these animals are being saved. And like, I think this number, this quantifying is to get people to feel like they're actually making a difference. Like, I am personally saving this many, this number of animals. But without that, maybe.
Otherwise, it's just a petting zoo. Yeah. If you don't believe that, it's just a fancy petting zoo.
That's definitely what it is.
Well, and Harrison Nathan says about this, he doesn't really drive it home with a hammer. He just kind of mentions this in passing. But this would be me driving home with a hammer. What animal charity evaluators are measuring as effectiveness is not linked to any effect. They're measuring the extent to which other animal charities ideologically agree with them, with themselves. And it's very subtle. It's very tricky. Now, I could do that. Again, I'm too detached. I have a real education in the social sciences. I've done real social science research. I've also done research on Buddhism and other things. But like, even in Buddhism, I wouldn't do that. Like, I wouldn't say, oh, this Buddhist temple agrees more with my personal beliefs and values, therefore it's better than some other. You've got to have the detachment to say different strokes for different folks.
It's not
but like,
objective.
I mentioned earlier, I'm in a sense biased against the rodeo thing.
Yeah.
You know, talking about horses and pony shows, I don't really give a fuck. It's just not my interest. Whereas there are other issues in veganism I'm much more passionate about, I'm much more engaged about. So that's something.
But they still should be evaluated by this group. That you know, even if it's if it's not really what they care about, the anti-rodeo groups should be evaluated on the same level as like Mercy for Animals or
So I mean, like that's a requirement.
That's what they're supposed to be there for, like evaluating charities.
And that's a requirement that's even lower than and simpler than science. I mean, for something to be a true science, you've got a whole lot of checkmark boxes. But this is just about being fair and equitable, which is, do we have the same unit? Can we compare unit by unit the value of the rodeo protest versus the value of a fur protest or a pamphlet-based activism or other, a video or film festival? If we have a vegan film festival, we could do fundraising for that today. You and me today, with no help from anyone, we could start a Patreon and say, we're going to do a vegan film festival. Donate money. Here's the location. Here's how much money we need. We can do that tonight. We can put up a Patreon and do that. Is it effective? Is it effective to have a vegan film festival? First and foremost, mostly only other vegans will attend. Right? But
that's okay.
But maybe that's still meaningful. Maybe that's still effective, right? That's what you get into. But you think there's a unit I can put on it, a unit such as number of animal lives saved, and I can compare that to a vegan restaurant or a rodeo protest? It's bizarre. It's really, really bizarre. This is a lower than science. We're not even talking about, is this truly scientific, but just, is this true, Yeah.
And that's not really what I want. Of course I would like fewer animals to be killed, but what I really want is for people to change and for there to be
well, and
some kind of like actual political action, something that will make veganism more prevalent, like you talked about, like restaurants, like there's a sign that says veganism is healthy. Like,
well, PCRM, they directly pursue real political change, right? I mean, so that's one example of purely political. There's the pursuit of cultural change, right? I'm publishing a children's storybook. I could do a Patreon for that, a fundraiser for that, like a Kickstarter tonight if I wanted to. Okay, it's a children's storybook delivering the message of veganism to children, blah, blah, blah. Is that effective? I know for a fact that storybook is already deeply meaningful to a number of people who read it. Like, some people read it in front of me. I was in the room and I saw the effect it had on them. So it is effective in some sense. It's deeply emotionally moving. My own mother said she broke down crying reading this story. She only read it in English, not in Chinese. But my mother does. My mother's Chinese is a bit rusty. But so there's a sense in which I know this is something moving and effective, and I'm going to pay an artist and publish a book. But putting a number on those and putting them in the same category. There's outright political change. There's the pursuit of cultural change that can be very slippery. And and then there's also just straight up dietary change. There's straight up advocacy for providing vegan meals, vegan alternatives in places that don't have them. And very, very hard to quantify. But apparently this is the challenge. I mean, look, I'm going to be straight with you. I am not saying, oh well, animal charity evaluators did the best they could. I guess they can't do better. I could do better. If I applied the same standards of social science research I used in Cambodia, I could do better. So there's no doubt it is completely possible to do a better job than animal charity evaluators. But still, I want to point out there's a sense in which they are trying to do something impossible. I think that's kind of philosophically very meaningful to stay in touch with. All right, click on the link below this video. We talk about this stuff all the time because we think about it in our own future. Is it a waste of our time? Is it effective activism for us or not? For us to own and operate a restaurant or a small bakery or a hotel? Like, we really think about that stuff. Is it a waste of our time to be involved in and try to collaborate with other types of activism? These are real, meaningful issues in our life. This is not some kind of academic abstract discussion. I do have a Patreon. If you want to join $1, you can join the conversation. Hit me up.
À-bas-le-ciel. À-bas-le-ciel.